Fellas, have you ever faced something so deep it made you question everything? I'm talking to make you question your purpose, your faith, your marriage, or even your will to keep going. Well, today's guest, a special friend of mine, Mike Melton, has walked that road from addiction to partying and even the heartbreak of his losing his first wife. But God didn't leave him there. The Most High God has turned Mike's pain into purpose, his tragedy into triumph, and get ready so you can see how you can rise from your lowest moments, reclaim your faith, and lead like the husband the Most High God has called you to be. Hey, Mike, what's going on, brother? How you doing today, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing tonight, man? Thanks for having me on.
Nah, you're welcome, man. It's always good to chop it up with you. And we're going to jump right into this, man, because your story is like it's something that can be seen on a soap opera, something that can be seen in the movies. Like your journey from the challenges that you've went through, right? Can you take us back to losing your first wife and how that led to your battle with addiction?
Um, it was like my whole life changed on September 14th, 2009. Um, that's when I found my first wife murdered. 2 days later, I found out that I was the number one suspect. And it took 6 years for them to figure out what happened to my wife. But during those 6 years, me living in that fear, I turned to alcohol. Now, I already had became an alcoholic, most likely in college because of my party drinking and things of that nature. But this situation took the alcoholism to a whole nother level. Um, and it lasted 6 years, like I said, and then they figured out what happened to her. And after that, I went to rehab the first time, and I wasn't ready yet. I compared myself out. I compared myself to other people that was there, and instead of identifying with them. And then they told me that I would come back. And when I came back, I would be drinking twice as much. And 4 years later, once the trial and everything was over for the people that killed her, I had hit my bottom alcoholism. And the first time I went in, I was drinking more than a pint a day. And the second time I went in, I was drinking more than a fifth a day. So they were right. My alcoholism had doubled. The amount that I was drinking had doubled. And at that point, I had reached my bottom. And that's when I had the gift of desperation. And I went to work to try to save my life.
And you said you had the gift of desperation. What is that?
The gift of desperation was it was a pain and a fear that was so much that my life was on the line. And I knew that I had to do something or I was gonna die. So when I got that, when I had that feeling, I remember going in the basement and praying and telling God to either help me or take me. Now I had always had a concept of God, but I had never got to the point to where I felt it was a life or death situation. And in that instance, I felt it was a life or death situation because I felt myself going crazy because the alcoholism had reached a point to where I was having DTs, um, um, the delirium tremors when you be shaking and stuff like that. So I started shaking, then I started hallucinating, and I was at that point in my alcoholism, and I still couldn't stop drinking though. I still wanted to drink and drink and drink. So I was at that bottom point, and I remember my second wife. She had told me that, asked me that she want me for her to take me to crisis, and that's when I knew I was at the point of where I might lose my mind. And I went in the basement and I prayed, and I said, God, either help me or take me because I don't know what to do.
And what was that like? What was that moment like when you went into that basement? And before you even answer that, it reminds me like when Christ said, "Go into the closet." So like you literally, went into a basement, went to a closet, and prayed that prayer.
Mhm.
What did that feel like at that moment, if you can recall that?
Um, I cried out and I said, if you help me through this, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And once I got in that basement and I prayed, um, a voice came to me and told me like I had to go back to rehab again. So I knew that's why I had to go. So I didn't want to go back to Florida again because I didn't want to be embarrassed of seeing the same people, even though it was 4 years later. So I flew across the country to California, and the rehab was terrible. Once I went in and saw it, and I was like, I'm not staying here. And then my second wife and my dad was like, you can't come back home. You got to go to Florida. So I flew from California across the country to Florida. and I went back into the same detox I went in before, and then I went into I did 5 nights in there, and then I went back into the rehab I went into before. And on the first night of rehab, out of desperation, I opened the AA book for the first time. I had never opened the book before, and
Mm.
I started reading because the first time I really didn't think I had a problem, so I didn't really feel the need that I needed to open a book. So the second time I went, I knew I had a problem, and I had to open that book. So I opened the book the second time I went, and when I opened the book, that's when I realized I started reading one of the chapters, and I realized, yo, if I don't do something, I'm gonna die.
And when you open up that book that second time, I recall something that you just said. You said that the first time you went there, you didn't read the book, but you compared yourself out. What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean you compared yourself out?
Um, I compared myself to what other people were doing in the rehab to compare to what I was doing. So I heard a guy, I was drinking a pint a day when I went in the first time. It was a
A
guy
pint,
that
hold
was
on, a pint of hard liquor, a pint of
hard liquor,
hard
hard liquor.
liquor, a
Yeah.
pint a day.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So when I went in, but when I heard a guy say he was drinking 1.75 liters a day, I knew that was a half a gallon. So I was like,
Mm.
I'm not like him. Then I heard another guy say he was drinking hand sanitizers and hairspray and all of this other stuff. And I was like, man, I'm not like him. And this other guy came over and asked me, what's your morning rush? And I said, what you mean morning rush? And he was like, what you drink in the morning? And at that point in my life, I wasn't drinking in the morning. So when I looked at these people, I said, I don't belong here. I'm only here because my wife got murdered and I need therapy. At that point, I told myself I didn't have an alcohol problem.
Now, you was telling yourself you were only there because your wife got murdered and you needed therapy.
Mm-hmm.
What, why didn't you like during that time when she was murdered? What made you turn to alcohol instead of turning to therapy or instead of turning to the Most High God during that time?
Therapy didn't work because you got to understand when you under investigation, it's a whole different ball game. So it's not like they I had went down there to see them and then they told me, all right, you cleared. We know this not you. You don't got nothing to do with this. So when I left the therapist's office, this thing is still ongoing. You know what I'm saying? So every day I wake up, I'm thinking today the day they coming. You know what I mean? So that lasted 6 years. So I was going to therapy, but it's really the therapist told me like it's really nothing they could really do because the situation is ongoing. And I remember in the beginning I did turn to God. One of the reasons God couldn't really help me at the time was because I was still sinning and I was still drinking. You know what I'm saying? So once I'm putting that other spirit in my body, he's my vessel is not clean for him to be able to send the spirit in me that could really help me. That was one. And the other reason was I remember my lawyer had told me, I remember him calling me and him asking and him saying what's wrong, man. I'm like, yo, I can't deal with this. This is too much. The stress is too much. I really can't handle this. Blah, 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 blah. And he told me, I've been doing this 30 years. Most of these cases, they don't solve. You got to get used to living like this.
Mm.
And I couldn't see this was like year two. I couldn't see myself living the rest of my life like that. So I turned my back on God and I dove into sin. I dove into fornication and I dove into more alcoholism. And I resorted back to the life that I knew would give me instant gratification to help me escape what I was feeling, the fear that I was feeling. And I remember at first having a conscience, like, yo, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to chill out. Then I remember losing that conscience, like not caring no more. Then I remember when I loved it. And at that point, I know I was working for the adversary. So if I would have died during any of that time, I was going to hell, bro. You
Wow,
know what I mean?
that's deep right there. And that's reflection as you look back. Now, how did so that went on for 6 years? You know, being
Mm-hmm.
on the investigation for the for you know an investigation for the death of your first wife.
Mm-hmm.
When did you meet your second wife? Because you were still,
In
battling addiction when, when you met her. So
mm-hmm.
how did that happen, and how did she step in to help guide you?
um, I'm on my third wife now. My second wife, she didn't like. I met her in the middle of this situation, so it was like around this happened in 2009. I met her around 2000, what I want to say, 13, something like that. I met her around, yeah, around 2013. Yeah. So um I had knew her growing up, and I was at some other woman house down in Maryland, and she asked, was there anybody around in that area that wanted to hang out? And me at this point in my life, I'm just going like, I told you I had dove into sin. So now I'm just dating anybody. I had went on all these dating sites, and I was just trying to really fornicate and just like meet any women that I could meet that could help me escape from what I was feeling. So when
Mm,
I'm at this one girl house, she on Facebook, my second wife, and she was like, and I knew her from growing up. We used to date in middle school. And then I met up with her at a mall, and then we started kicking it. And then, you know, when you sick, you try to use other people to fill that void. You know what I mean? So I escaped into another relationship, and I had no business getting into that because one, I'm going through this traumatic experience, and two, I was an alcoholic, and three, I didn't even know what I was supposed to do in a relationship, and I didn't even know like how you how to be a husband or what to like how to lead somebody. Nothing. I was lost, and the whole thing was in a blur. Like the whole relationship was a blur. All we really did was travel and party and all that kind of stuff, and I was never present mentally. Like I had checked out. When I look at my pictures now from that relationship, and you look in my eyes, I'm gone. Like I'm never present because I was never sober the entire relationship.
now, what you said is like, I hear what you're saying, and you said something real key that you was like, well, we just party, like we lived that life, we traveled. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
couples get caught up with that to
Mm-hmm.
avoid the trials, the circumstances that they got going on in their life. It's like they use it for a band-aid. And it seemed like
Mm-hmm.
you was using that for a band-aid to escape what you were going through. Let me
Mm-hmm.
deal with her, let me lay with her, let me,
Mm-hmm.
travel all around to escape this pain
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going
And
through.
it was fear. The only time I felt comfortable was when I was out of New Jersey. You know what I mean? So when I got on the plane and I went somewhere else, I could feel some ease and comfort for a while. But I always had a fear that I would be arrested when I got back to the airport.
Brief interruption, real quick. If you listen to this and you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below. Therefore, you're notified whenever we have another Men of Valor, Husbands of Purpose podcast. Also, you can share it out if you find this episode valuable. And fellas, if you're looking to have a deeper relationship with your wife, cultivate more conversations, more intimacy, download our free video guide. It's in the descriptions below, or you can just go to connectionconversations.com, download our free video guide, and start getting more intimate with your wife and just really build that bond, build that friendship, build that love. Go to connectionconversations.com, or you can just click the link in the description. Peace and blessings. Back to the episode. Yeah, like I said before, like in the beginning of this seems like it can actually be a movie, or a lifetime series, You because you
Mm-hmm.
see these things on Lifetime, and you're
Mm-hmm.
actually someone that said that actually made it through. Like I didn't do it. I battled for 6 years through addiction. I'm fighting for my freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and I turned to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real life story. What
I
what's
didn't turn to God the end. So after 6 years, when they figured out what happened, I still went back to drinking. The case ain't get solved to two. It started in 2009. The verdict ain't come down to 2019. After the
10 years?
2019, yeah, after the 2019 verdict, then I went to rehab, and that's when I found God. So I was drinking for 10 years. I just had a little stint in the middle when I went to rehab, but I ain't take it serious.
The father was really watching over you because, you know, you was found not guilty.
I wasn't found guilty. I was never charged. What happened was once they figured out who did it in year 6, then we had to go to trial for the people that did it. Then I knew I had to testify, so I got scared because I didn't know. I knew they had to make me look bad. The prosecutors told me they're going to say you're the one that did it. That's the only defense they got. And you got to testify. And there was 3 lawyers that were going to question me. So I had to I didn't know what they was going to ask me. I didn't know how much of my past they was going to dig up. I didn't know none of that stuff. So I got scared. But the crazy part was it took us 4 years to get to trial. So all that time I'm scared, but the trial won't never happen. It just keep postponing and postponing, postponing, postponing. And they postponed it for 4 years. So all this time I'm scared, I started drinking more and more. Then I had to retire from my job for PTSD. And then so now I'm home all day. So now I knew when I was walking down the hallway and they told me I had to retire, I was like, I knew I was going to go under for alcohol because I couldn't wait to get home to drink. And now I don't got to go nowhere. You're just going to send me a check. And I had my basketball company. So I'm home. Every day was Friday.
Mm.
I remember losing track of like the days of the week because I didn't have no reason to. Only time I needed to focus was when I had a tournament like every month or every other month. Other than that, every day was Friday. So I started drinking at 2, then 2 went to 12, then 12 went to 10. And as I started getting closer to the time, I started getting more scared. And since I didn't have God, I would turn more and more to alcohol because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had never been at a trial. I had never only saw this stuff on TV. I didn't know like what to expect. I didn't know like what I was gonna do. I didn't know none of that stuff. I just knew that I'm gonna go on that stand, and I knew they was gonna cross-examine me, and I knew it was 3 lawyers, and I knew their job was to make me look bad. I didn't know how far they was gonna dig in my past. I didn't know about the adultery, if they was gonna bring that up, the fornication. I didn't know what they was gonna bring. But I didn't want to mess up, and these guys that killed her got off. So that's where I was at.
Praise God that they actually found the killers and they was
Yeah,
charged. You know,
yeah.
praise God for that. And I want you to go back to that moment where you actually went into rehab. You went into
Mm-hmm.
rehab for
The
that
first
second
time or the
time.
second time? The
The
second time?
second time, yeah, the second
Mm-hmm.
time you went into rehab, you
Mm-hmm.
opened up the book,
Mm-hmm.
the 12 step.
The, the the
What
AA
was
book.
that like?
I was laying in my room and I just was like feeling that desperation of fear. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm out of rehab. I mean, I'm out of detox now, and the reality hits me like you got to do something different. So I opened a book and I try to read the chapter called Doctor's Opinion, which explains the whole concept of what happened was the doctors used to say that alcohol was incurable, like you couldn't uncurable, like you can't cure it. So when people used to get alcoholism before, they would just lock you in the sanitarium because they figured once you get out, you start drinking again, you're gonna get crazy again. So they didn't have a cure. But these doctors figured out that the cure was God. But it's a chapter called The Doctor's Opinion. I tried to read that, but coming out of detox, it couldn't register in my brain because the words was choppy. It was like reading the Bible. I couldn't understand it. Then I went to this chapter about the guy who started AA, Bill, but his story was from like 1940 something. I couldn't relate because it was too old. But then I got to this chapter called More About Alcoholism. And when I read that chapter, that light cut on in my head. And I said, oh, you got a problem. And nothing never resonated with me to let me understand I had a problem. And it was part of the chapter that I got some of it right here. It was part of the chapter that I read, and when I read it, it resonated with me that if you don't do something, you're gonna die. Like at first, it resonated with me because I was doing everything that they was talking about in this chapter when I was drinking. And I couldn't believe, like I immediately turned to the front of the book because I couldn't believe they was talking about me. When I read this stuff, I'm like, bro, I tried all of that.
It's every
And
excuse.
exactly. But that's what you do when you in that alcoholism. You say, nah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I changed from beer to wine, I changed from white liquor to dark liquor. I did all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And nothing worked. And then I got to the part of the chapter that changed my life. It was this guy, 30, and he had a business. And he said alcohol. So I automatically resonated with him because I got a business. And then he said the alcohol was ruining his business, his drinking. So he said that he wasn't gonna drink again until he retired. And he stayed sober 25 years. He didn't touch one thing of alcohol for 25 years. They said he was 55, he had his slippers on, and he picked up a drink. And in in uh in uh in 2 months he was in the hospital and he died in less than 4 years. They said the alcohol progressed in his body even when he wasn't drinking. So when he started drinking, his body picked up where they thought he should be at in terms of the amount that he was drinking. And
So
that's
that
when
means,
I said,
so that means he started drinking more than what he was drinking before. So that reminds
yep,
you of that scripture when Christ
yep,
said, like, when you clean that vessel,
yep,
when you clean that
yep.
vessel, you got to be on guard because what's going to happen is if you let that one
7
spill
more are
back
gonna come
in,
back.
it's coming back seven more.
Yep, yep, exactly,
And I've
exactly.
I've been there before, not with alcohol, but when I used to smoke weed, it was a
Mm-hmm.
time where I had stopped for like a good year, year and a half, and then my older brother had passed away, and I told myself, well, okay, I'm only gonna do it for 3 days. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Mm-hmm.
only gonna do it for 3 days. Them 3 days now, then after 3 days, I said, well, I'm only gonna do it for this month. Those 3 days turned into a month, turned into 3 months. But in those 3 months, I was smoking so much more and wasn't even getting high. Wasn't
Mm-hmm.
even getting there. So that scripture started coming to me. I started living that scripture. I was like, hold on, you know what it is? It's time for me to stop. Going to
Mm-hmm.
fast, cleanse my temple, and stop. And since that day, I've been clean. That's been what,
That's
2012.
that's dope, man, that you was able to do it like that. So then I did the 12 steps. I joined this group called Back to Basic that take you through the steps. And once I joined that group outside the rehab, they gave me a sponsor and they took me through the steps. And after step 5, I had my spiritual awakening, and that's when the spirit entered me. And then from that day forward, all I wanted to do was serve God. Like I had never felt that before. You know what I
Well,
mean?
what is step five? I don't want you to run past that. Because you said step five, that's when you felt your
Yeah,
spiritual awakening. So
yeah.
what is step five?
Step 5 is all right. Step 4, all right. Step 1, you got to admit that you're powerless over alcohol, and my life was unmanageable. Step 2 is I had to come to believe that God could restore me to sanity. Step 3 is I made a decision to turn my life and will over to the care of God. Step 4 is I had to make a fearless moral inventory of my life. So I had to go into, I had 4 sheets I had to fill out. I had to do a sex inventory. I had to do an inventory on resentments, all the people that I resented. I had to do a inventory on harms, all the people that I harmed. And then I had to do one on fears, everything that I feared. And then you got to write it out, and it got columns that you got to fill in and answering the questions about all of your whole list of everything. And then I looked at myself. It was the first time I ever saw myself in black and white. Like, because I could rationalize anything in my head on why I behaved, what I did, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But it's something about when you see yourself in black and white written out. I couldn't lie no more about who I was. It's right in my face. And I felt shame. Like I didn't know I was that bad. Because in my mind, I tell myself that I'm a good dude. I do this for people, I do that, blah, 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 blah. But when I saw myself, I saw the patterns of my behaviors, especially when it came to women. I saw all of that stuff and I couldn't lie no more. And I felt so disgusted in myself and I felt so shamed. And then step 5, I had to go to my sponsor, and it's me, him, and God in the room. And I had to sit down and I had to explain everything to him, the exact nature of everything on those papers. And once I did that, it crushed me because the ego and the pride and the arrogance to the person I thought I was shattered because somebody else knew everything about me. So then I felt like this. I felt naked. I felt exposed. I felt, you know what I mean? And then he was like, we got to pray. We got to get down and pray. And then he said, we got to pray for three things: for God to forgive you, for God to make you a new person, and for God to give you strength to forgive yourself. And I looked at him. He said, yeah, you got to forgive yourself. You were sick. And then we got down on our knees and we prayed. He said, now go back to your room and sit for an hour and meditate and think about everything we just did. So I went back to my room and I was about to go lay down. And then I was walking towards my bed and this warm sensation just went through my whole body. And this voice came in my head and said, all you have to do is serve me and you don't have to worry about nothing else. And it was like blinders came off of my eyes and it was like I could see the world spiritually. I could never do that before. And from that moment, all I wanted to do was serve God. I had never felt like that before in my life. Like I had never wanted, like I didn't care about at that moment. I didn't care about women, money, alcohol. I didn't care about nothing. All I wanted to do was serve God. And I said, from this day forward, and I got back on my knees and I asked God, like, why did you allow all this to happen to me? Like for her to get murdered, for me to find her, and for me to be the suspect, and then for me to become an alcoholic. And then 2 weeks later, it was time for the program to be over. And I did and I told my story for the first time in front of everybody. And then it was like 150 people at this rehab. And I told my story and they were staring at me and the way they was looking through me. And that's when it hit me. Like he got me through this so I could use my story to go help save people's lives. And on that day, I found my purpose. And I said, I got to go out and do this.
And that experience, right? What you
Uh-huh.
just it's the Most High is amazing, right? Because you just said step five.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna show you something. You just said step five is what changed. That's when you found God, right?
Mm-hmm.
James chapter five.
Verse 16.
James chapter five. I'm gonna read it real quick.
Yeah. Confess
Verse
yourself.
matter of fact, verse 13. It says, any among you afflicted, let him
Mm-hmm.
pray. Is any
Mm-hmm.
merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer and faith shall save the sick, right? And then it
Mm-hmm.
says, going down, confess your faults one to another and pray
Yep.
one to another
That ye may
that
be
you may
healed.
be healed.
Yep.
And the effectual fervent prayer of the righteous man
Yeah.
availeth much. I
Yeah.
mean, you just live that scripture, and when it says like the elders of the church, it means like those who are overseeing the people. So you
Mm-hmm.
went to your sponsor at that time, which was overseeing you to help guide you,
Mm-hmm.
confessed it, let it all out, and you
Mm-hmm.
said you felt that y'all prayed that
Mm-hmm.
earnest prayer, that fervent prayer, and
Mm-hmm.
you felt that warm sensation, and you found
Mm-hmm.
your purpose.
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna ask you something because this show is about men of valor, husbands of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? Going back to the number five first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Step five, James 5. Congratulations on 5 years of sobriety, my brother.
All praises, all praises.
Congratulations on five
Praise the
years of
Most High.
sobriety. If there's someone listening right now, right? A brother, someone listening right now that's battling addiction or
Mm-hmm.
feeling stuck in their role as a husband, as a man, as a leader, what's the one thing they can do today to start turning things around and walking and living in their purpose?
It's funny. I did a video this morning about because I knew a lot of people was gonna be in different churches around the world tonight, and they're gonna be talking about how they ready to give their life to God and things of that nature. And I didn't get into like a doctoral thing. It was more about I just told them the steps that I did. So you got to understand that before I did that kind of stuff, I was living for myself. You know what I mean? That process helped me die to who I was so I could truly live for him. So that person that's out there that's struggling like that, until they're willing to die to their self and become a new creature for him, they're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Because the process, what happens is what we're truly doing is we're running from our we're running from our cross because we keep running from the trauma. That trauma until when you what I did in them steps was I faced the trauma head on. So when I faced the trauma, it broke me. Then when I got to that point of brokenness, he said, "You're ready now." I couldn't use you before because you was too arrogant and stuff because you kept trying to use everything else to deal with the trauma. You want to use alcohol, you want to use women, you want to use this, you want to use that. You ain't want to face it. So he put me in a situation where I had to face the trauma. So I would tell that person, you got to face the trauma head up because we're only as sick as our secrets. All of the stuff that you don't want to talk about, that you keep trying to push down, all of the stuff that happened to you when you was young, all of the stuff you did when you was young that you don't want to talk about, that's keeping you from your purpose because the things that happen to you, that's what he's going to use you to go help the same people that went through that. So most of the time, the people stay in these cycles because they're running away from the trauma. They're running away. They don't want to carry their cross. And carrying your cross is whatever you went through, whatever happened to you, that's what you got to face. And then you're going to go out and you're going to let all the people know how the Most High got you through that. And then they're going to see the Most High through you. But you got to get broken first. And the way you get broken, the way I got broken was during that process. And then I had to go out through step 8 and 9. I had to take that list of people that I harmed and people I needed to forgive. And then I had to go to step 9. I had to go out and make amends to all of those people. And I had to forgive the people that did stuff to me. And I did all of this before I got baptized. So when I got to GOCC and I went in the water and came out, I was truly another person because I wasn't carrying all of that stuff from my past into that water and bringing it out with me.
You had already dealt with that baggage, faced that.
Yeah, yeah.
It make me, it make me. I've got another scripture. I'm gonna read. It's chapter 5 too. Listen. First Peter chapter 5,
Mm-hmm.
verse 10 says, "But God of all grace, who hath called us unto his eternal glory by Christ,
Mm-hmm.
after that we have suffered a while,
Mm-hmm.
make you perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you."
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like, you know, that's what you went through. That's what a lot of us went through. But some people get stuck in the suffering part
Mm-hmm.
versus making it through the suffering part so he can make us perfect. Going back to what you said, he had to break you. It's things he had to break in me, for me to get to a certain level, for me to, submit to him, for you to submit to him. And now he broke you. He wore you down. You went through some things. He's made you perfect. And when we read the word perfect in the scripture says, it basically means complete. He's completed a part of your life, a part of you that has you going out, fulfilling your purpose, but also fulfilling his purpose that he's called you to do. And speaking of that, one of your purposes, you have a sober heads podcast. Let's talk about that.
Um, Soberheads is actually a name that my current wife came up with. When I got out of rehab, I went through a divorce because, and this was before I came into the truth. I'm just had that feeling, and when I got out of rehab, I just the first time I'm around this person sober now. I had never been sober around my second wife, so we go to therapy, marriage counseling, and I'm sitting there, and she's talking and answering these questions, and I'm like, I married her? Like I couldn't really see like the way she's thinking and the way she's talking that I married somebody that think like this. So I'm like, so now everything is starting to come back to me because it's the first
Oh,
time I'm
let me ask,
sober.
was that a good thing or bad thing when you said
Bad.
that?
Yeah, because you don't really listen. I was in so much of a fog those years were like a blur, like I wasn't never present. So now this is the first time I'm present after everything is done. So now I'm like, so then I'm like, and I tried to explain to her the journey that I was on, that I had found God, and I needed to be sober, and I had to do a different lifestyle. And she was too caught up in the lifestyle we used to live. So I knew it was like my sobriety or the or go back to drinking. You know what I mean? And I had to choose my sobriety. So I had to do that divorce, and then um um and then what was the question though? Because I had got off track.
We were talking about the sober heads. You were saying that,
Oh yeah, yeah. So then,
your
so
current
then,
wife helped you come
yeah.
out of the
So
street for
yes, yes, yes. So then, when I was in outpatient after rehab, aftercare, I had met a brother that I had grew up with, and he walked through there, and we knew that we was all right. Now both of us in recovery. So I linked up with him. He lived in a sober house in Trenton. So I was like, yo, we going to all these different meetings. Won't we have a meeting at your sober house, and invite all the men there to come to the meeting, and get other people from the community to come to the meeting? One of the goals was I wanted more of brothers in the meetings. You know what I'm saying? Because when you go to a lot of outside meetings, you only see like one or two black men in there. You know what I mean? So the goal was to get more of us to come to those kind of meetings. So we had to come up with a name of it for the meeting, because every meeting got a name. And my wife now, Rochelle, was like, how about sober heads? And I said, yeah, with a Z on it. So then we started having the meetings there. We did the meetings for like a year. We started having the meetings, and then they got disinterested. I'm still lit up because I'm in the sobriety. I'm hyped. You get what I'm saying? So then when it was time to do podcasts, I had somebody ask me did I want to do a podcast. So then I just carried the name over from that and said I'm gonna do a podcast with sober heads. And then my goal was to get people to come on and share their experience, strength, and hope about recovery, and so other people can learn from it. You know what I mean? So we started doing that, and it's doing okay. I'm trying to do some. It's not that easy to get people to be that vulnerable, to come out and be able to talk about their experience, strength, and hope. You get what I'm saying? Some people are more private with it. So it's the basketball I want. I do also. It's easier to get people to come on because people want to talk about their careers. But the sober heads is not as easy, but I'm willing to keep working to try to get it better though.
Where can people find that podcast at? Soberhead.
They could go to the Sober Heads podcast on YouTube, or they could come to my Facebook page on Mike Melton on Facebook, and I have Sober Heads on TikTok. Sober
And
Heads with a Z.
And if it's any husband that's listening right now, if if you had your battle with addiction, if you overcome, you like to share your story, reach out to him. Because like he said, he's still working on building that up. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're open to share your story so it can actually help other men, help other women, even, teens, children, please, reach out to him. And speaking of children, like right now you work with adolescents. What made you shift to, like, you have the Sober Heads podcast? What
Mm-hmm.
made you shift to working with the adolescents and sharing your faith as well with them?
Um, it's funny. The second time I was in rehab, I had met this tech. And working at the rehab, he do groups. He like a teacher that do groups and stuff. So he used to be he used to work for Don King as a publicist. So he was making high six figures doing that for Don King when Don King was in his heyday with Mike Tyson and all of those dudes when Don King was Don King. So he quit the work in recovery to make like $15 an hour. So I'm in rehab and I'm talking to this dude and I'm like, why would you do that? And he told me, he said, stay on the road that you're going and one day you're going to find out. So, and I say that to say, when I got on my journey, I was working on my basketball company when I joined the church and stuff, and I was making six figures a year doing the basketball thing. And I joined GOCC. I started feeling the conviction of working on the Sabbath. You know what I mean? Then COVID had came around. I started feeling that conviction of working on the Sabbath. And then I said, I can't quit because it's the only way that I could support my family. I was using that as an excuse. So then the Most High started taking the passion away from me, slowly taking the passion away. So then I said, my wife was at my house, and we was around each other a lot. It was getting aggravated a little. So I said, I got to go back to work every day. So I had went to this rehab. I had worked at a rehab before in Pennsylvania. So I had went to this rehab to speak, and I asked somebody, can I get an application? So I fill out the application. I go in for the interview. I wanted to work with adults. And they said, but I told them I only could work the 7 to 3 shift. I don't want no other shifts because I got to still be able to live my life and do my own recovery. So they was like, we don't got no 7 to 3 for adults, but we got a 7 to 3 spot for kids. And I was like, nah, I'm good. I ain't working with kids. You know what I mean? I'm like, nah, because I retired from that, this and this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm good. I go home. My wife getting on my nerves. I'm like, oh, I gotta do something, man. So I go back to the place to speak again, a week and a half later, and I'm speaking downstairs in the adult unit, and the guy that's my supervisor walked by and looked at me and said, "Yo, man, my kids could really, man, you could really help my kids." And I said, "Man, I'm gonna come in tomorrow. Just explain to me what I gotta do." And I came in the next day. And he told me what my job was, and I love it, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's like I know the Most High has me there for that purpose to because I'm in recovery. So the kids look at me a little different than somebody that just went to school for counseling or things of that nature. Because I'm in the fight with them, I take them to meetings, and we in the meetings, and they hear me sharing about life for real. You know what I mean? They hear me talking about what I'm going through. You know what I mean? I share with them different things I do so I can stay sober. They see the zeal. You know what I mean? And they know how much I love the Most High. I talk to them so much about the Most High, and more importantly, they see how I really live. Like they know, like they see that I'm faithful to my wife. They see that I don't flirt with nobody at work. I don't be disrespecting nobody. They see me with the fringes and the tassels on. They're curious about, yo, this dude is really into this. You know what I'm saying? I took them out to see the brother street preach a couple of times. I took them to baptism. You know what I mean? So I know he has me there to plant seeds in these kids and the adults, because I work with adults at the job too, downstairs on Tuesdays, and now Tuesdays and Wednesdays I work with adults. So he has me there to carry the message. And it was humbling, bro, because I went from a total different lifestyle. Like this year was the first time I went on vacation and I had to really look at my budget. Like I never had to do that before. So it was like I really gotta I really gotta look at how much I'm spending. I really gotta do and it was humbling, but the payment I get is I'm at Sam's Club with my wife, and I see this older lady around, I want to say 70 something years old, and she on one of them carts, and she with her kids and her grandkids, and stops me in there. Mr. Mike, I'm still sober. I was in your group at New Hope. That's who I was talking about, baby. That's him right there. God worked through that man. That man really helped me. That's the payment I get. You know what I'm saying? When I see this lady with her family and they happy that she's sober, she's not drunk or high, she's present, she's being a grandmom now. And then I tell her it ain't me, it's God. He just using me. Like I ain't the person that's doing this. God is doing this. He's just using me to do it. So, and then when I see those kids, when we do the kids, when it's time for them to leave, and they do and we do something called the goodbye group, where they got to go around and we say something to them, and then they go around and they say something to everybody, all the kids, and they say something to all the staff, and so many kids come up to me and tell me like they didn't even think about God until they got there and was in my class, and they tell me I'm the only dad they ever knew. Like I wish you was my dad. You the only dad that I ever knew.
It's like doing that loss, right? Say all things work for good for them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the tragic death of your first wife has caused you to be a significant role in so many other people's lives being saved.
Yeah, all
That
facts.
is that is that is something else. And we talking about from grown men, grown women
Mm-hmm.
to children.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, you're not just touching them with like, okay, get off the drugs, get off the alcohol. You're touching them with that, but you're touching them with something that's so much more. You're touching them with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing Christ to these people. You know, God is awesome. And you've stepped into this purpose, you stepped into this calling.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you said you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pick up your cross and bore your cross. You face the pain, you face the trauma.
But I do have to um rewind a little bit and give a lot of credit to my current wife. I gotta give her a lot of credit.
I was gonna go there. My next
I had to
question.
give her I gotta give her a lot of credit in terms of when I came out, I had reached out to her once I separated and I was going through my divorce about how I was feeling about God and I had went to a church in Ewing area called Change Church. And when I walked in there, it's amazing how God worked. The last time I was totally sober like that was when I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager, I was going to Baptist churches, but I knew in my spirit that what I was learning wasn't right. You get what I'm saying? When I became an adult and I was drinking, I would go to church and I put up with it because I was still living a wild life. You get what I mean? So it was just like, all right, y'all say this, all we got to do, this, what we got to do. Okay, bye. I knew deep down it wasn't right, but I tolerated it because of how wicked I was living. When I became sober again, I go to this church and I had those same feelings I had as a teenager. Like this not hitting my spirit right. So I contact her and she didn't go straight into. She had been told me about the truth years ago. I was like, I ain't never messing with that. Like it was too strict for me. Like I wasn't, but I was always honest. That ain't for me right now. I ain't that kind of person. You know what I mean? So when I reached out to her, she didn't send me Israelite stuff at first. She sent me Pastor Darby, and he was like the bridge from Christianity for me to come over to being an Israelite. Because he talked about Israelite principles, but he delivered it like a Christian pastor. And he still had church on Sundays. So she sent me these videos and I'm watching this guy and he started chopping at my conviction. You know what I'm saying? Like I still listen to him now because there's certain things that he talk about that even our church don't really get into enough, which I wish they thought, like lust and fornication and adultery and you know what I mean? So I still listen to him for those messages because I need to still be cut and always be reminded. So she sent me him first. Then I started listening to him and he started getting into who we were. So now I'm listening to him, listening to it. So now I'm like, all right. Then she said, now I got something else for you. You should start researching different Israelite joints. So now I go on. Now I'm researching Israelites. This in like 2020. I'm researching Israelites. Then she said, this is the church that I always wanted to go to. And then she sent me the elder. And when I was listening to him, what made me like him was he said that it's something we got to do within us to change. And it starts with us and our families and us serving God and us doing this. He didn't put it on no other races. He didn't point the finger at them. He said, this is what we got to do for us to become better. And I saw his approach and how he was doing it. And I said, this is it. This is what I'm at. But if it wasn't for her on the spiritual side, on the God side, I wouldn't be where I'm at on that side. The recovery side, I put the hustle in. God showed me how to put the work in on that side. But to get where I'm at on the spiritual side, I got to give her the credit for like Because she could have just sent me that other stuff in the beginning, which might have would have turned me off. But the key was when she sent me Darby as like the bridge for me to like convert me over.
Now, speaking of your wife, um,
Mm-hmm.
helping guide you into the truth of Christ and your newfound spiritual journey, how do you actively show love and leadership in your marriage on a day-to-day basis?
It's interesting. When I first came in and we first got baptized and we first was in this, I thought that it was instantly she was gonna become submissive and stuff because that's what the book says that she's supposed to do. So I'm on her like, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. No, 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 no. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Blah, 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 blah. So then I called for counsel. And the one thing that the deacon told me was she learned submission from you, the way that you submit to Christ. And it blew me away at first because I didn't expect that answer. So now I'm trying to figure out like what you mean. So then he broke it down to me. When she see that you totally submitted, now she got two decisions to make. She gonna either follow suit because she know her salvation is at risk, or she gonna flee because it's too much. You know what I mean? So then she saw that I was real serious. And one of the main things she told me that she knew I was serious was when I stopped doing the tournaments. She was like, because she knew that was my life. She said when I stopped doing the tournaments on for basketball, she knew, all right, this dude's serious. So she knew she had to start getting better and falling in line. So, and one of the things that I learned was that it was humbling to understand, to look back at and do reflections on what I did wrong before, and understanding that me trying to live a righteous life and living the best righteous life I can is what's needed to put protection over her and to protect my household by me living righteously. See, I didn't understand that when I separated from my first wife and because I had no knowledge of what was going on, I didn't know what I was doing. So once I separated and I started going out and doing adultery and stuff, I left her uncovered. So then Satan was able to come in and allow what happened to happen because I wasn't living righteous. I didn't have no knowledge of that back then. So now I understand that not only in my marriage now, I have to live a righteous life, not only because for my salvation and protect me, but to have that protection over my family because I'm not leaving that door open for him to be able to come in by going out, cheating or doing this or doing that and living unrighteous, and that's leaving her uncovered.
So what I'm hearing from you is that like you live in a righteous life, submitting to Christ is how you actively show love and leadership
Yeah,
in marriage on a day to day.
yeah, yeah.
Being
And I gotta thank the Most High that I have a wife that's understanding to the point of that, meaning that she could have been like, I remember Mike that used to do the tournaments and stuff like that. I want that kind of Mike because we need this bread. You get what I'm saying? Like, and she's not like that. She don't. Ever since we got together, she never picked up not even a sip wine. She ain't have to do that. She could have been like, listen, you the one that got the alcohol problem. I don't got no problem. I could have a couple of things of wine and be cool. But instead, she's like, nah, why would I drink? Why would I put you at risk? What if I kiss you and then that trigger you? You know what I mean? So that kind of sacrifice and that kind of commitment to making sure that I'm good, it like opened my eyes up. You know what I'm saying? And I just think about that and I just think about that I have to serve him to the best of my ability and really lead the way. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanna because I owe him. Like I owe him, bro. Like I remember like I told you before, if I would have died doing any of that wild stuff I was doing, I was going to hell. And he reached down and grabbed me out and was like, nah, I got something else for you to do. He ain't have to do that. You know what I'm saying? I remember back when I was living wild, when my first wife telling me, you know what your problem is? And she was right. She said, you don't know how to pick a side. She said, you always do bad things and then you feel sorry for it. Then you go back and do it again and you feel bad again. She said, won't you just be either good or bad? Because then I'll be able to respect it more. And I remember I used to be on vacation on this island and stuff, and I used to go out there and I used to commit adultery and stuff like that. And I remember being on a sitting out by the I used to sit out by the pool on the late night. Got me something to drink, got my black a mile. I have a woman in the bed or whatever, but I'm outside. And this will be one of those moments when I'll be reflecting. And I'll be like, yeah, you think you're having fun, don't you? And I was like, but what you gonna do when you're 75, 80 years old? You might be on your deathbed. And you look back at your life and you say, yeah, you did the basketball thing, but you knew you was making money from that. But when it came to being a stand-up man and it came to being a husband, you wasn't nothing. And I thought about not having no time to fix nothing. And I thought about how I would feel. He gave me a chance to rewrite my life.
Glory to the
So every
Father.
exactly.
Glory to the Father. Man, you have such a powerful testimony and powerful story. In 3 words or less, when I say husband of purpose, what comes to you?
Um, leading her to the kingdom.
Lead her to the kingdom.
Yep. Yep.
That's 4 words, but that's powerful. That's 4 words, but it's powerful, man. Listen, Mike, you have a very inspiring story. Anyone that would like to reach out to Soberheads, I'm gonna link everything down in the description so you can reach out to him. Watch Soberheads. If you've been battling addiction, you need some a sponsor. Reach out to him. He can help you. If you overcome any addiction and you like to share your testimony if you like to share your testimony, your story to help someone else, reach out to him. Or everything will be linked in the show notes. Mike, if you could leave husbands right now, if you can leave husbands with just one message about faith, recovery, or leadership, what would it be?
It would be, I'm reading it. It would be Romans 12:1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto the Most High, which is your reasonable service. Once you do that, and you really into that, and you really do that, everything else will fall into place of what He wants you to do.
Mike, thank you for sharing your story and your mission. Your journey is proof that God, the Most High God, can turn our deepest pain into a powerful purpose. To our listeners, remember, no matter what you're facing, God is not finished with you yet. Just step
Mm-hmm.
up, lead your family, lead your children, lead your wife, and trust in the Most High God in this process. And remember, we are empowering husbands to lead in life, love, faith, family, and purpose. And together we lead. Peace and blessings.